Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Hall, and welcome to the April 16th, 2026 Interagency Transportation Equity Advisory Data Implementation Subcommittee meeting. This subcommittee's focus will be on elevating diverse and historically marginalized voices and will advise the California Transportation Commission, California State Transportation Agency, and California Department of Transportation on how to achieve meaningful outcomes in transportation equity, environmental justice, and equitable economic opportunities, especially as related to transportation planning and programming. The mini agenda is located on the Commission website at www.catc.ca.gov. Any document created for the subcommittee can be translated into any language needed. Simply email us at transportationeac@dot.ca.gov, and we'll have them returned to you as quickly as possible. American Sign Language interpretation is being provided for this meeting. You should see them on your screen. Spanish interpretation is also being provided. You can access this service through the Interpretation tab at the bottom of your screen. Please use the Q&A tab if you have questions about this. Live closed captioning is also available. Select the Show Captions tab at the bottom of your screen. There's a number of language options there. Speakers, for accessibility purposes, we ask that you please state your name before speaking. Committee members. All members attending remotely must visibly appear on camera unless you are unable to do so due to connectivity issues. If that's the case, please announce the technical reason for not appearing on camera. Presenters, if you're on the agenda to make a presentation, please do your best to be succinct. Remember to speak at a steady pace to allow our interpreting service adequate time for accurate interpretation. And members of the public, we welcome comments from the public as a part of each item at this meeting. You should see the webinar control panel likely located on the bottom of your screen, and there you'll find the raise hand feature and Q&A buttons. Please use the raise hand feature as soon as we reach the item to give the system time to acknowledge you. Committee staff will let you know when it's your turn to comment. Alternately, you may use the Q&A tab to submit a written comment, and committee staff will read that on your behalf. And as a reminder, each registered attendee is provided a unique link and number to access the webinar. These should not be shared with other participants, as this can create confusion for staff when making comments. Again, do your best to be concise, speak at a steady pace to allow interpreting adequate time for accurate interpretations. And we ask that you make your point in 3 minutes or less. If, for some reason, we have many speakers on a single topic, we reserve the right to limit comments to 1 minute if needed. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Justin. I'm now going to share my screen to read the land acknowledgement. Would any member like to read it? If not, I can go ahead. Oh,
I can read it.
okay, thanks.
Land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land we now call California is the ancestral lands of the over 109 nations, tribes, and peoples. The indigenous peoples of this area have a deep reciprocal relationship with the land and its original stewards. Their ways, methods, and traditions have contributed to California's rich biodiversity and have impacted the transportation network for the state. We stand with Indigenous communities and are committed to partnering and advocating for a more equitable and sustainable future. Our transportation network not only connects us to families, friends, work, and leisure, it connects us to our past and future. We embrace our past with a future commitment to inclusiveness and equity for everyone who calls this state home.
Thank you, Member Gittins. Would anybody like to acknowledge the land that they're on?
Member Martha Armis Kelly. I am in Merced, California, Miwok and Yokuts territory.
Member Wong?
The City and County of San Francisco recognizes the land as the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone peoples.
Okay, thank you, Member Wong and Member Armis Kelly. I'm now going to move us into roll. Or sorry, not roll, voting for the chair. So at this time, we're going to take nominations for the role of subcommittee chair, and any members can nominate themselves or another member of the subcommittee. So at this time, I'm going to open the floor to nominations for subcommittee chair. So yeah, just state your name and nomination. Member Wong, I see your hand still up.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to lower it.
Okay.
That was
Member
before.
Iwasaki.
Thank you.
Neil, I would like to nominate myself to return as chair of the subcommittee. For those that may not know me, Naomi Iwasaki, I'm based here in Los Angeles in District 7 and had served as the Data Implementation Subcommittee chair for the past year. I was really learning how to be a subcommittee chair. It was a great experience. Staff was extremely helpful. But what I think I'm very interested in supporting the subcommittee with this year is identifying more opportunities to influence how the state measures transportation impacts to communities, especially around interjurisdictional coordination and data sharing strategies, and really figure out how can our EAC help the state translate data analysis and findings into actual improvements for marginalized and vulnerable communities that they can feel. I have a background in developing and socializing equity assessments in different transportation agencies, most recently at LA Metro. And yeah, happy to answer any questions to the group. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Member Iwasaki. Member Ernest Kelly.
I just wanted to say for the record that I was going to nominate Member Awasaki, former chair, for this role. So I guess I would second that nomination.
Yeah, great. If we have no other nominations, we can go ahead and take that second. Okay. Justin, do you want to lead us in a roll call vote for Member Iwasaki to be nominated as chair?
Sure, will do. Lisa Marie Alvarado,
Aye.
Martha Armas Kelly,
Aye.
Carrie Akimi Hernandez, Gloria Huerta, Florence Simon,
Aye.
Anthony Giddens,
Aye.
Naomi Iwasaki,
Aye.
Pualani Vasquez,
Aye.
Howard Wong.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Okay, congratulations, Chair Iwasaki. Carolyn is going to send you the chair's agenda for the rest of this meeting, so go ahead and keep your eye on the on your email inbox to lead us for the rest of the agenda for today. But in the meantime, I'll take public comments not on the agenda. Do we have any public comment?
And also just to confirm, there was no public comment on the previous item either.
Thanks.
And then a reminder, if you may use the virtual hand raise feature or submit your questions first through the Q&A tab if you so choose. And at this time, I do not see any requests to comment.
Okay. Naomi, let us know if you're ready to lead us into the next action item. If not, I can go ahead and continue facilitating.
Yeah, I received the chair's agenda, so thank you. And thank you, subcommittee members, for voting me in, as well as Member Armas Kelly for being willing to nominate and second my nomination. I hope to be a very transparent and open chair. So if there are ever any questions or concerns with the subcommittee or my leadership or guidance on this, I genuinely hope folks can reach out and let me know what they think. So our next item is adoption of August 2025 and January 2026 meeting minutes. Are there any members willing to make a motion to adopt both the August 19th, 2025 and January 23rd, 2026 meeting minutes? I believe we did not have quorum to previously adopt the August minutes at the January meeting. So a motion and a second, please.
Motion.
I second.
Thank you. Can I please have the clerk conduct a roll call vote?
Lisa Maria Alvarado,
Aye.
Martha Armas Kelly,
Aye.
Carrie Akimi Hernandez, Gloria Huerta, Florence Simon,
Aye.
Anthony Giddens,
Aye.
Naomi Iwasaki,
Aye.
Pualani Vasquez,
Aye.
Howard Wong,
I probably should abstain since I may not have been at those meetings.
Okay. Chair, the motion passes.
Thanks, Justin. So our next item is agenda item 6, the Caltrans Equity Index User Guide presentation. I believe we have Macy Noorani, who is an Equity and Data Policy Advisor, as well as Carolyn Abrams, who we all know as our Senior Advisor for Transportation Equity at Caltrans. So I will pass it over to staff to start this presentation. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, folks. Macy's going to pull up our presentation, so you all should see that shortly. And
Caroline,
yeah.
I don't think I have the access to share. I just sent my request.
Did you get that? I accepted that. If not, I'll do that.
Okay, let me just do that one more time. Okay, let's see. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, Macy. I'll go ahead and kick us off. So, good morning, everyone. Carolyn Abrams. I'm the Senior Advisor for Transportation Equity in the Caltrans Director's Office of Equity and Tribal Affairs. And I'm here with my colleague, Macy Noorani. Macy, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you. Happy to be here. My name is Macy Noorani. I am the Equity and Data Policy Advisor on the Director's Office of Equity and Tribal Affairs.
Awesome. So I know that we've come to the subcommittee a number of times with the Caltrans Equity Index. So at this point, many of you should be familiar with this tool. And as we continue to work with this subcommittee, we're really hoping to get feedback on a number of different use cases and use you all as the subject matter experts that you are to help inform this work. So Macy, if you can move to the next slide, I'll go through the agenda for today and talk through what our advisory request really is. So at the last subcommittee meeting, you all helped brainstorm a number of use cases. Many of those are items that we are continuing to work on, and we will have an update for you on that today. But the purpose of today's presentation is to bring an advisory request to you all to basically be test users for the EQI user guide. So we're going to talk through what that means. And in the process of doing so, Macy's going to give you an overview of our draft user guide, which we are still working on internally. And then to put it in context a little bit more, we will provide an update on our EQI use cases that are currently under development. And then we're going to walk through a couple exercises that we have for you all to do outside of the subcommittee meeting, but we want to make sure we preview those for you today. And then at the end, we'll have time for some questions. Next slide. Okay, so we have been developing a user guide to essentially support Caltrans staff and eventually to be used by external partners as well, so that folks have a resource that can walk them through using the EQI. So our objectives with this are having you all as subject matter experts and also as sort of an objective, like third party, someone who has not seen the document before. We want to ask you all to test our EQI user guide and really make sure that it's clear, that it's practical, and that it's well designed. And then with that, we want to get some feedback from you all to improve the guidance. So we have not released this user guide yet. It is still being developed internally. So we think this is a good place where we have a solid draft. We would like you all to weigh in on it, and then we can refine it as needed before bringing it back to this subcommittee and then releasing it for Caltrans staff to use. So as I mentioned, a couple outcomes, we will refine the user guide based off of your feedback. This will hopefully improve the capability of Caltrans staff to integrate the EQI into their work. And this will also help us identify any technical assistance gaps for both internal and external users. And I just want to note that at this point, the EQI has been available for about 2 years. And during that time, we have been developing a number of different resources to support this work. And we've also put out a couple other tools and guidance documents, but we haven't put forward a complete user guide yet. And we're recognizing that that is very much a need that folks are asking for. And so that has brought us to this point in time where we want to make sure all of the guidance is compiled in one place where folks can access it and have a lot of clear direction on how to use the tool. Next slide. Okay, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Macy, who will give you an overview of our draft user guide.
Thank you, Caroline. So I'm going to go over the EQI user guide overview. The EQI user guide provides step-by-step instructions for applying and understanding the EQI framework. It outlines methods to identify underserved communities and transportation-based priority population, provides approaches for assessing potential community impacts using EQI indicators, offers guidance on incorporating equity considerations into project planning and analysis processes. Overall, the goal here is to support consistent and effective use of EQI across Caltrans programs and districts, and helping ensure transportation investment address community needs, reduce transportation burdens, and improve equitable outcomes across all communities. The EQI overview and core components, the guidance introduces the foundational elements of EQI, including underserved communities, traffic exposure metric, access to destination metrics, and transportation-based priority population. It provides guidance on when, why, and how to apply EQI in planning and analysis contexts, and includes an overview of the EQI web map as an interactive tool for exploring screening results, and explains how to read and interpret EQI outputs to support consistent analysis, offers guidance for using EQI to identify and understand community transportation needs, provides a specific direction for identifying underserved communities using EQI indicators, and lastly, introduces the beta version of the analytical tool for deeper equity analysis and decision supports, and includes supporting tools and references such as the Caltrans Engagement Portal and the Caltrans Statewide Engagement Playbook. And And then in this slide, I walk you through some of the updates on previously discussed some of the EQI use cases so far. So first one is SB1 fund. This use case is now moving from early coordination into more detailed development work. We have reviewed the example indicators and tools listed in the section A of the Transportation Equity Supplement, which is a guidance document for all the programs under SB1 fund, and updated the EQI language and recommended using EQI in the application submittal process. Next one, next step, we had an EQI introduction during the application workshops this week that gave the applications a chance to see how EQI can support their applications in real time. Finally, we'll be analyzing both successful and successful applications that used EQI in cycle 4 to understand what's working well and where improvements are needed, and will help us provide an effective EQI guidance for future cycle. Next one, EQI integration into transportation planning scoping information sheet known as TIPSIS. EQI is integrated into TIPSIS to enable early identification of underserved communities and equity gaps through embedded screening questions. The framework is incorporated into the pre-planning checklist to ensure equity considerations are included at the earliest stages of project development. Following pilot validation, EQI will be expanded to all districts, supported by user training and documentation to ensure consistent application. And finally, EQI analytical tool beta version. The beta tool provides project level EQI analysis without requiring extensive time or technical expertise. The tool generates a high level report summarizing potential project impacts on communities based on EQI metrics. And with that, I'll hand it over to Caroline for the rest of the presentation.
Thanks, Macy. So as I mentioned before, we wanted to give you an update on some of the use cases that are under development so that folks have a sense of how the tool is being used, which will then help give you that context for when you review the user guide yourselves. But more specifically, what we'd like to do, and we won't do this in real time today, but I'm going to walk you through these exercises that we've put together. And then essentially, we are going to send you home with homework so that you all can give us some feedback on the user guide. Yeah, Chair Iwasaki.
Thanks, Carolyn. I'm sorry to interrupt. I know that staff has brought the EQI to the subcommittee several times before, but I do think we have new members who maybe have not been privy to just a quick primer on the map itself. So as you're walking us through this, if you could maybe consider doing just a quick introduction to the objectives and intended uses and functions of the map. And if you already were, I apologize, but just wanted to get ahead of that.
No, that's a great flag. Thank you for doing that. And I should mention that anybody who is new on this subcommittee or is not familiar with the EQI, whether you've received one of our presentations in the past and you need a refresher or you're completely new to it, Macy and I are always willing and happy to meet with you all to give you an overview of the tool and essentially answer any technical questions that folks might have. So we can always set something up. Feel free to reach out to Macy or I. Our contact information for the EQI team will be at the end of this slide deck as well. But that being said, as a quick refresher for folks, Essentially, the Caltrans Equity Index is a spatial mapping tool that Caltrans has developed, and it is really intended to be transportation focused. So, recognizing that a number of other mapping tools exist, we have Cal EnviroScreen, we have Healthy Places Index, we have all of these other tools and resources that many of you are probably familiar with. There was a foreseeable gap in what we were trying to accomplish in the transportation space, and that is trying to understand the burdens and the benefits of our transportation system. So this tool was developed to be very focused on transportation and to do so at a very granular level. So in this tool, you'll see that we can drop some links in the chat for folks to explore on their own, but you'll see that we capture underserved communities. We also capture traffic exposure. And so that's really looking at the burden of our transportation system, looking at crash exposure, traffic volume and proximity, things like that. There's a number of different metrics that we measure there. And then we also look at the benefits of our transportation system. So that is captured in our access to destinations metrics. And in that, you'll see that we measure pedestrian, bicycle, and transit access in relation to car access. And what the EQI does is essentially capture the areas that are not receiving the benefits from our transportation system. So in other words, where there are significant gaps in access to destinations. And then we do have a layer in there, which we can go into more detail later, but we look at what we call transportation-based priority populations, and these are going to be the areas of the state where the burdens are the highest and the benefits are the lowest. And so these are the areas where we want to really focus our efforts and our investments. It's not to say it's the only area that we will focus on, but it helps narrow that lens that if we're trying to prioritize projects and understand what's going on the ground, that gives us a better sense of what's happening in those communities. So with that, the offer still stands. We're always happy to give an intro presentation, meet with any members, walk through the tool and some of our other resources. And then today, if there are any specific questions that we can answer, we're happy to do that as well. Okay, with that, I'm going to run us through these exercises. So what we've put together for you all to do in your own time are 4 different exercises that will allow you to test the user guide. And in doing so, we've set these each up with a prompt, an objective. We've outlined the steps that we want you to follow using the user guide, and then a requested output. And then that is going to be followed by questions to really solicit your feedback about your experience completing that exercise. So was it clear? Was it unclear? Were you able to find the answer? Things like that. So I'll walk through each of these just briefly today, and then we will be emailing out these exercises to the members along with the EQI user guide. And then folks on their own time can complete any number of the exercises that you all have capacity for. That might mean you have time to do 1 exercise. That's perfectly fine. You might want to try all 4. Amazing. We will gladly take any feedback that we can get. So that being said, the first exercise is really focused on identifying underserved communities. So as I mentioned, underserved communities are captured in the EQI. And there are a number of different use cases at Caltrans where staff need to be able to identify underserved communities using this tool. So ideally, we've set up the user guide in a way that makes it easy for folks to do this, but this is where you all come in. So the objective with this exercise is basically to determine whether a project is located within an underserved community as defined by the EQI. So you'll see there's a couple of steps here, and the output that we are requesting is just a yes, no, is the project located in an underserved community? And then we have some discussion questions that we'd like your feedback on. I'm going to pause there really quick before I run through the other exercises. Are there any questions up to this point?
Uh,
Yeah, Member Wong, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wondered, the EQI web map or map, is it based on data from census or uh, what's the history of the map?
Yeah, great question. So there's a number of different data sources. They are all publicly available data sources. Some are data sets that we have developed in-house and are available for folks to download and access. Others are based off of census information, and most of the data are available to be updated annually. So it's a couple different sources, but I'll drop some links in the chat so that you can look at some of the indicators more specifically and where those data sets are coming from. Member Gittens.
Yeah, I just had a quick question regarding the layers when it comes to, like, for example, the underserved layer. Are you referring to the project component type, that drop down?
So the underserved community layer is going to capture our demographic information, and currently the two metrics that we have in there are based off of income and tribal land status. So there is a new layer that is titled Underserved Communities in the EQI web map. But then I think what you might be referring to, I don't know if you're looking at the analytical tool, but we have another sort of companion resource where folks can actually enter project components and see how their project shows up on the map and essentially analyze the impact across the board with the different EQI metrics.
Got it. All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions from members at this point?
I got dropped off for some reason. I couldn't get back on, but I had a question in regards to what you're saying about a project. So we could potentially enter our census tract or our project where it's related, and you would be able to give us back data accordingly to that particular project. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yeah. So we have an analytical tool that we've developed. It's still in beta version, but it's available for folks to use to, play around with and test it out. And I think we have an exercise in here that focuses on using that. And essentially, with this analytical tool, you can go into the map and you can draw your project component. Let's say it's going to be a bike lane. And so you can add the bike lane, and then that will generate a report for users that will tell you the directional movement of how that project is going to impact that community based off of our different EQI metrics. So will it have a positive impact, a negative impact, or something that's more neutral? And then what we are working on refining is providing some additional guidance or considerations that folks can think through. So if you see that this is having a negative impact on access to destinations, for example, then what are some of those considerations that folks should think through as they're developing their project to help mitigate that?
Excellent. That's great. I did want to mention that I've heard a lot of conversation around the EQI in other meetings with other organizations. So recently I was at a conference where the Cal and Virus Screen 5.0 was introduced, and I'm wondering, are you using some of those data matrix points to support this part of your project?
So the EQI is distinct from Cal and Virus Screen on purpose. Cal and Virus Screen is obviously much more focused on environmental justice considerations and has a number of metrics in there to account for that. Whereas the EQI is very narrowly focused on transportation. You will see things that overlap, such as traffic exposure, and we have, for example, like truck weighted traffic, things like that. But you'll notice that the biggest difference is going to be on, looking at access to destinations based on like bicycle, pedestrian, transit access, and then some of these other transportation burden metrics. There's, of course, going to be some overlap with demographics, but as I mentioned before, the two demographic metrics that we use in the EQI are the low income metric and then tribal land status. And this is all done at the census block level. So, as folks know, transportation happens at a very granular level. And so, rather than looking at larger census tracts, this tool offers a granular picture of our transportation system.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions, I'll go through these exercises, and then I think we'll probably still have some time for additional Q&A if we want to open it up at the end. So with that, Macy, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So this second exercise, if folks want to test it out, is really going to be focused on identifying transportation burdens. So the objective is to determine whether a project location meets any of our EQI criteria. And that can be traffic exposure, access to destinations, or transportation-based priority populations. So we have a number of steps here to walk folks through looking at the web map, locating the project area, and then toggling on and off the different layers to figure out whether or not this project falls in one of these buckets, essentially. And then the output, again, a simple yes/no question of does the project location meet any of these EQI criteria? And if so, we would like you to identify which layers apply. And then you can provide some feedback using the discussion questions. Next slide. All right, and then this exercise is really focused on one of our use cases that is in alignment with SB 960, which is more commonly known as the Complete Streets legislation. So a big use of EQI currently is to identify underserved communities and to be in compliance with SB 960. If a project falls within 500 meters of an underserved community as identified by the EQI, then there needs to be targeted engagement done with that community. And the reason for the 500-meter buffer is because if a project is located in that community, naturally, we can assume it's going to impact that community, but surrounding communities can be impacted as well. So we do this buffer. So this exercise is to really test whether or not the user guide is clear on how to identify that buffer and where that project falls. So you'll be asked to determine SB 960 project eligibility based on the proximity to underserved communities. So you'll see a number of tasks here where you'll be looking at the spatial data. This is an exercise where you'll need to use ArcGIS Pro or another spatial analysis software package. There is access online if you can create a free account, but if folks do not want to do that or that's too cumbersome, you can absolutely skip this exercise. But I imagine that a number of you who work in the data space might already have access to spatial analysis software. So if you have that, fantastic. The spatial data should show up and work in any platform. So with that, we are trying to find out if the project is located within 500 meters of an underserved community. A simple yes, no, and then responding to these discussion questions to figure out what we need to tweak to make sure that this is really clear for users. Next slide. Okay, and then our final exercise, as I mentioned before, we have this beta analytical tool that has been developed to support planners and other folks that are scoping projects understand the potential impact of their project based on the metrics that are captured in the EQI. So we are asking folks with this exercise to really try and understand the report that is generated with this analytical tool. So you'll be asked to put in a hypothetical transportation project. This could be a safety enhancement, a corridor improvement, a bike lane, something like that. And then the tool will generate a report, and then the steps that we have provided are asking you to use that report to understand how these different project components are going to influence these metrics. So the output, we are asking for folks to list the key EQI indicators that are affected by your proposed project, and then basically describe the nature of that impact, whether it's positive, negative, or neutral. And then once again, we have some discussion questions about how easy that was to interpret and so on and so forth. Okay, I will pause there. I have a couple wrap-up items and next steps, but I want to see if folks have any questions before I do that. Yes, Member Vasquez.
Thank you. Carolyn, in the email that you sent to us as far as the EQI data tool, can you, in the background information for how those data sets were compiled, can you also please make sure to include the data set for the layer on transportation, the traffic exposure screen? Because I'm kind of playing around with the map as you're talking, and I'm having some trouble understanding where that information is coming from. So I'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, why don't we, in our email that we send out to the members, that includes the user guide and the different exercises, we can include a link to the data download so that folks can easily access the spatial data. And then we can include a number of other resources, linked to our webpage, which you'll see on this slide right here, but also a link to our technical documentation. So Member Vasquez, if you want to really get into the weeds and understand, some of the data sources and how they're calculated, all of that's in our technical documentation as well. So we can make a note to send all of that to members. Chair Iwasaki.
Thank you. And thank you so much for this presentation and walking us through the ask. As we all know, tools are only as good as the user's ability and capacity to use them. So I'm really glad that Caltrans is utilizing the subcommittee for robust user testing. When you do send out the email, just a quick reminder, I may have missed it, when you would like feedback by. Is it before the June meeting or another deadline? And I'm sorry, I think I missed that. And then either now verbally and or in that email, if you could share any successes or early lessons learned of applying the EQI to any specific other projects or case studies, I think that would also just help better illustrate for us, just what sort of tool this is and what we can expect from it.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'd be happy to. I think we have, in addition to the updates that we provided today, there are a number of other use cases that are under development or really already implemented. We still kind of refer to them as use cases, but we would be happy to continue providing those updates and those success stories to you all, just so that you have a better understanding of how this tool is being used. And then to answer your question, so let me go through next steps really quick, and that should cover timing and what you all can expect in terms of how to provide your feedback. So after we send out the user guide, which will be in the next couple of weeks, and the exercises, and then some of these other resources, we welcome feedback via email, but what we'd also like to do is offer members with individual briefings if you would prefer to share your feedback basically in conversation with the team. I think sometimes it's really hard to provide static feedback, but if you have some thoughts and you want to workshop something, or something wasn't entirely clear, but you don't know how to convey that to us in an email, we will set up these one-on-one briefings. And so members can meet with myself and Macy individually and provide your feedback that way. So we're going to schedule a number of different time slots for the last 2 weeks of May. It should give members with ample scheduling flexibility, and we will invite members to sign up through the Microsoft Bookings link, which is typically the link that you all receive when you're signing up for an agenda briefing or a member debrief. So folks should be familiar with that at this point. So essentially, you'll have, a couple weeks to do one or a couple of these exercises, sit with the user guide, and then schedule a meeting with us. Or you can send your feedback via email, and then we will essentially use the following month to compile all of your feedback, make some refinements to the user guide, and really summarize, what feedback we got from the members and how that informed, the final product. And then we plan to come back to the June subcommittee meeting. We can share that out with all of you. And then if there are any additional thoughts or additional input that you all want to share at that point, we'd be happy to take it then as well. Any questions on next steps or process? Okay, so we've got a couple to-do items on our end, which is to send you all the user guide, send you all the exercises, send the links and resources, including the download link for the spatial data. And then we will make sure that we get you all the Microsoft Bookings link so that you can schedule some time on our calendar. Or if you respond via email, that will suffice as well. So with that, I will turn it back to Chair Iwasaki. Thank you.
Thanks, Carolyn. And thank you, Macy, also for your contribution to the presentation. I hope folks are able to carve out time to test some of these tools and, I think really be honest with the feedback about what it's like from the user experience. Yeah, so thank you for this opportunity. I think our next item is wrap up and next steps for this subcommittee meeting. So the data implementation subcommittee meeting will reconvene again in June. I think a specific date is still to be determined. And we'll continue working on the Caltrans Equity Index at that time. Just a quick announcement. An email was sent out in late February with a follow-up from the SHSP team who came and gave a presentation on statewide data for traffic safety and violence and collisions. And some committee members had sent out or had asked questions during the January meeting and then sent out follow-up questions. So that SHSP team did send a response. Please let staff know if you need the email resent or for folks who may have not been able to join that January meeting, if you're interested in just hearing some of the feedback from the state team about how they collect data and what decisions are informed by the information that they collect. Please let staff know. Also, if you are interested in reviewing the TIRCIP or Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program grants, please make sure you fill out the interest form by April 24th. That's next week. That email was sent out last week. I assume folks can also let staff know if they need that email resent as well. And then, as Carolyn mentioned, there will be agenda briefings, not only for potential use case testing conversations, but also briefing signups for the May business and executive meetings that will be coming up next month, where I hope to see everyone, at least virtually, at that meeting. Are there any questions or comments from members at this time?
Chair Iwasaki, I just want to also note that the SHSP answers to the questions that the members asked are also on the California Transportation Commission website. So we can email those out again, or you can find them on the website.
Okay, thank you.
I did want to say
seeing any.
congratulations, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Armis Kelly. And thank you everyone for putting your faith in this single nominee for this chairship. And again, I just want to reiterate, want to be in dialogue and community with all of you. So appreciate any feedback, good, bad, or otherwise.
I did want to say that I hope that this year we'll be able to have not only the programs that are happening through Caltrans, but also to be able to support the members that are sitting here in this subcommittee with any intellectual data that would serve our communities as well, so that we could take it back to our communities and be able to understand a little bit more of those matrices, because the ultimate goal is to be able to not just support the work for the state, but also to get the knowledge that we could take back to the community on how to disseminate some of these programs and the data that we do work with on a day-to-day basis. So thank you.
Thank you for that. I noted that for myself. Thank you, Chair, Member Armas-Kelly. Any other questions or comments from the group? Okay. With that, I believe, do we entertain a motion and second to adjourn? Is that the appropriate step?
Yeah.
You'd think I'd know this by now. I'm sorry.
No, that's not necessary.
Okay. So we can just say goodbye and have a good day.
That works.
Okay. Goodbye, everyone. Have a great day and a great weekend. See
Thank
you all
you.
next month.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.